how are we gonna differentiate between all the other people doing what we're doing in Latin America, in Spain, in Mexico? Is we're creating a sound that fuses urban UK sound with Latin music. So when we're producing reggaeton, our reggaeton beats are going to have a London element to it. Our drill music is going to have a London element to it. So that's what we want to do. We want to fuse the popularized urban culture here from London. We want to fuse it with the Latino thing, and how that's popular is, for example, myself. So I grew up here. I was born here. As you can tell by my accent, I sound like a London boy. But if you talk to me in Spanish, I'm 100% Latino. Now, the problem we have there is identity. I identify as a British Latino, and that's what we need to sell to the world. Because that is what is unique.
Buenas, ¿qué tal, gente? ¿Cómo están?
Bien.
Hola.
¿Qué transita?
Todo bien, weón. ¿Cómo los trata este fin de semana ustedes?
Bien, mejores que a otros que yo sé.
¿Con guayabo o sin guayabo,
Sí.
muchachos?
Limpio.
Fresco.
Como una lechuga.
Está bien. Bueno, el día de hoy en verdad tuvimos tremendo invitado, muy buena entrevista. Tuvimos a Luciano Santana Pinto. Él es director de A&amp y cofundador de Candela Records, una disquera que acaba de firmar un acuerdo con Warner Atlantic en el UK, en el Reino Unido, y con ADA UK, con este fin para desarrollar y crecer artistas, firmar artistas. Y no solo eso, sino una de las cosas que nos contó es cómo desarrollar una escena musical. Entonces, con esto dicho, muchachos, ¿qué fue lo que más les quedó de esta entrevista?
Primero, tremendo invitado, ha sido un tipazo. A mí me cayó de maravilla, pero me encantó su visión de cómo ve la industria musical latina en el Reino Unido. Cómo quiere él llevarse a artistas de que quiere firmarlos y potenciarlos para el futuro, ¿no? Quiere, digamos, él ve ese long-term investment, que no mucha gente lo tiene, especialmente ahora, que no se sabe qué va a pasar, que todo el tema de la popularidad es muy volátil, que salen muchos artistas de One Hit Wonders. Entonces, creo que esa mentalidad de long term es lo que más valoro de lo que hemos podido hablar de Candela.
A mí en lo personal me gustó mucho su perspectiva con respecto a todo el background de los artistas, a cómo desarrollar prácticamente talento multicultural con gente que viene de familia de América Latina, pero que nació en otro país, en un país de afuera, y cómo él ve esto como una oportunidad y cómo empieza a trabajar a los artistas y cómo él literalmente quiere potencializar estas nuevas expresiones artísticas que están saliendo hoy en día cada vez más y más y más fuertes, todo con el fin de promover la cultura de América Latina en otro país. Eso para mí fue muy interesante y aplaudo por la visión que tiene, que me pareció increíble.
Puta, me quitaste. Tenía que decir esa última weá. Me quitaste todo mi comentario con esas últimas 3 palabras, weón. Yo
Puedes decir control C,
sí,
control V, ya.
te voy a borrar. Para mí lo mejor fue lo clara que tiene la película él, como decimos en Chile. Tiene, creo que yo, un proyecto muy desafiante. Saber tener un sello de música latina en Inglaterra suena como algo muy desafiante, y tiene la película muy clara él, en todo sentido, y creo que esa es una lección que nos deja durante todo el capítulo, tanto como desde la perspectiva de los artistas, de cómo firmarlos, de qué hacer con ellos, de qué tipo de artista, hasta la parte de business misma. Creo que tiene la película clarísima, y eso es algo con lo que yo me quedo y que fue lejos lo que más me gustó. Bueno, y obviamente que un tipazo, muy simpático, nos cayó excelente creo que a todos, y nada, agradecerle también por venir.
Sí, yo coincido con ustedes, muchachos. La visión que tiene, primero que todo, antes de estar desarrollando y firmar los grandes artistas, es lo importante de formar primero una escena para que una vez tengamos esos artistas desarrollados, tengan una audiencia que esté comprometida, que interactúe con esos artistas. Pero bueno, entonces, Luciano, en verdad, muchísimas gracias por venir al programa, compartir con nosotros tu experiencia, tu sabiduría. Lo apreciamos mucho y sin más preámbulo, Luciano.
So, hello, Luciano. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. How are you?
Very good here. Thank you so much for coming.
No worries.
Just to dive right into it, we would like to ask you and to talk a little bit more about this huge partnership that came along with Atlantic Records and Nada. How did it came along? What does it imply a little bit for our listeners to understand and to have a better grasp of what's going on?
No problem. So it all started off with a very good friend of mine called Austin DeBow. And we sort of connected maybe in 2015, 2016. So prior to Candela Records, we've always worked within the music industry, whether it be through events, whether it be through artist management, the festival that we do. We've always had like some type of input into the music industry, in the music scene here in the UK. So when I met Austin, he was I believe he was head of artist relations for Spotify in the UK. And I also had a very good contact in New York, who's AJ El Callejero, who at the time was the head of artist relations for Spotify in New York, but for Latin artists. So they kind of made the connection, and I kind of got introduced to Austin, and we formed a really good friendship. And then obviously a few years later, Austin moved from Spotify to becoming the vice president of Atlantic Records here in the UK. And that's when the opportunity to form Candela Records came around. So Candela Records never existed before that. We created it jointly with Atlantic Records. Austin and Trenton from ADA, these guys are fundamental to making this deal happen. In fact, they sort of envisioned it and kind of, these guys have a lot of input in the UK music scene, and they helped bring the Afro beats and the funky house into popularity here. So these guys are visionaries, and they can see things years ahead before it happens. And we've always discussed doing this, for many years. And obviously, when he moved over to Atlantic Records, we figured that was the best time to do it.
Well, that's amazing, Luciano. And also, I wanted to ask you, because now that you said that Candela was born due to the partnership, other than distribution and signing artists, what are the other opportunities this alliance has brought you as Candela?
Well, apart from the signings and stuff that we're going to be doing and developing artists, what we've done is we've created a side of the business which is called Latino Life, and that's like the media arm of Candela Records. And with through Latino Life, we're focusing heavily on events. So, for example, 2-3 weeks ago, we did a festival, the only Latin music festival here in the UK, and it was a free festival, and we got 40 to 50,000 people throughout the day. And the reason why this festival was really special to us is because we didn't have any international famous people from Puerto Rico, from Spain, or nothing like that. We had just local London-based Hispanic artists and DJs, and we managed to pull a massive crowd of about 45,000 people. So we're really proud of that. So that's in addition. So to answer your question, in addition to the signings, we also have a whole new division now, solely focused on creating events, creating events that give artists an opportunity to perform, which the Latin scene here in the UK is very, very underrepresented. I'm not sure if that's the right way to say it. It's not represented at all in the mainstream. So we have to create those stages for these artists, and that's a big part of what we're doing.
Sounds great, man. And I think I speak for the four of us, and congratulations with all these things, like the partnership with Atlantic, ADA, bigger representation that you guys are doing with the whole Latino music that is developing in the UK. So, and this brings me to the other question, is that with Candela, as being an extension, as you just mentioned, of the media group Latino Life, which has given you guys the pulse of what is happening in the Latin American culture in London, right? So
Correct.
For young label managers who already have their foot on the door with major labels and want to formalize the relationship with them, how do you guys take that partnership to another level, right? To the point of formalizing it, and what actually triggered that point that you say like, oh man, like we have to do this, like for sure?
Well, it was. I think the most important thing in life and in anything you do, business and in normal life, is understanding your weaknesses and understanding your strengths. You know, what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And a lot of people don't like to look at these things. So but that's something that I'm really good at. I'm really good at knowing what my weakness is and how I can improve on that. So when I was talking to Austin about creating this record label, I knew that I needed much more to my portfolio, to my personal portfolio. I know I needed a much more infrastructure, you can say. And Jose Luis, who's the owner of Latino Live, was a very good friend of mine as well. So I met with Jose Luis. I discussed with him, you know, the opportunity with Atlantic Records. And between me and Jose Luis, we formed a partnership. So that's the original partnership. Me and Jose Luis, we are Candela Records, essentially. And the reason why it works so perfectly is because, so from my side, you have the artist management, you have the social media. We have quite a large social media following here in the UK. We have I come from pirate radio. We come from radio, social media, artist management, that kind of side of the business. And then you've got Jose, who has his own magazine, for example, who has the only award show for Latin music in the UK and Europe. He has obviously what is now the festival that we're working on. He started that off by running a smaller festival called La Clave. So he had all this infrastructure that I thought was very important to making Candela what it needs to be. And I knew that with Jose on board, he would cover my weakness. He would be, and we would have two strengths. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with him and, on all these amazing projects that we're doing together, and Candela. And it's just a fantastic team to work with.
And do you guys have any reference point or record labels that you get inspired from that actually you see Candela there for, like, in the future, or actually doing for the Latin American sound?
So we're not necessarily inspired by any other record label, but what we are inspired by is the urban movement in the UK. And how, so if I give you an example with funky house and Afrobeats and the African urban community, the way they've been able to popularize it here in the UK and then connect it with the wider international market, to me, is fantastic. It's phenomenal what they've been able to, they've taken Afrobeats and within the space of 10 years, maybe 10, 15 years, it's gone from being a subgenre or, a small scene to becoming, they developed it further here in the UK, and then from the UK they bridged it with the international scene, and that's what inspires me. Because reggaeton and the urban Latin music is already huge. It's massive in the world, all over Europe, all over the world. So what inspires me is the possibility of popularizing it even further here in the UK with the local artists, and then connecting that with the already existing international art scene. So that is what really inspires me, and how they've been able to do that here in the UK.
That's fascinating, man. And also, the story of the Latin American musicians in the UK is being always super interesting, right? Because you guys started with El Mundo Ros, Caetano Veloso as well, Jorge Spiteri, and they've been establishing a Latin American culture there in the UK, right? Also with other huge artists going and performing there, like Celia Cruz, Sector Lavoe. Yeah. But now I'm curious, what are the greatest influences that the British Latino artists are getting? And where are those influences coming from?
I think those influences are coming from the international appeal that the reggaeton artists are having lately. So, for example, if we look at Bad Bunny, for example, and how he's been able to work with international stars like Drake, and Drake is obviously a massive influencer here in the UK. So it's just seeing how reggaeton is expanding internationally and collaborating with, artists from the hip hop scene, from the, all different types. They're even doing, Afro beats as well now. Raul Alejandro's now going into the pop kind of thing. And it's just seeing how these artists are sort of expanding into those scenes is what I think inspires the young Latin artists here in the UK.
Yeah, like I totally agree. And you were mentioning, like, for example, right now reggaeton, and we all see this urban music being like basically reaching top charts in the world. Everyone knows about reggaeton, everyone dances to it, everyone listens to it in the nightclub or even like in the car and everything. But also, like, in Latin America, we have more than just like reggaeton and Bad Bunny, like we have a lot more. We have a lot more. Absolutely, we have like bachata, cumbia, salsa, a lot of like music genres, 100%. Styles, cultures, rhythms. It's just like so rich, our culture as Latinos.
Very rich.
And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you think these sounds can reach the same level as reggaeton has already done it?
That's a big question, my friend. That is a very big question. And personally, I don't think I'm the right man to answer that. Because, salsa and bachata. Okay, let's talk about salsa, right? Salsa is already an international sound. Yeah. They teach salsa in every London pub here. You can go and learn to dance salsa, no problem. The problem with salsa is, okay, and I'll try to connect it with what's happening today. We live in a world where artists now are producing music at a very, very high rate. Okay, you have albums dropping all the time, new music videos, new singles, and it's always about trends and about what's new. That's just the world we live in, right? And I feel like with salsa, they're not. It's not allowed. It's not a case where a lot of young artists are springing up all over Latin America and producing it, and I feel like that's kind of what's, in my opinion, halted and allowed for reggaeton to surpass it on an international level. Is that being able to adapt to the international market in the sense of production, in the sense of how much music is actually being put out. Obviously, salsa is his own case. You've got bachata, you've got loads of other genres. I honestly feel that all of these genres benefit from the success of reggaeton. And I feel like none of these genres will ever have the same success as reggaeton. I think they will have their own type of success on an international scale, but I think reggaeton was built for international success. It comes from the original Jamaican reggae, which is one of the biggest influences in the world. So reggaeton is set up to be an international genre, whereas I think the other genres, yes, they are appreciated on an international level, but I don't think they'll ever have the same success as reggaeton. That's my personal opinion. But that's not every genre. I mean, if you look at Latin rock, Latin pop, that's huge. That's massive. I'm more referring to like the traditional genres, like the bachata, the salsa, those kind of genres.
And just to jump there, just as you mentioned, like we are in the world in an industry where everything has to go so fast and we have to feed the machine all the time. And the production and the times of salsa, bachata, they are like way bigger because you have an orchestra, you have like the production and the recording is way more difficult and takes a little more time for that to actually have a final product.
Yeah, that's what it, and yeah, that's basically what it is. Just if you compare it on a production level, reggaeton produces way more. And I think if you look at it just based on numbers, that's why. But like I said, with Latin rock and Latin pop, I wouldn't say that they're, that's huge. They're huge markets, But I think definitely with the traditional genres, the That is what is the problem, in my opinion, anyway.
Luciano, this is amazing. And so far, we have been talking about the huge influence like Latin music has had in the world, specifically in music. But I wanted to ask you, like, with all the experience that you have had doing events with Latino Life, especially, do you feel like other areas of the music scene have been impacted by the Latin culture, call it promotion, marketing, whatever, if any, at all? Have you felt that in any other area aside from music itself?
I'm not sure if this answers your question, but there's one thing that I've noticed in the last few years is so there's quite a lot of events here in the UK, Latin events, specifically urban Latin events over the last few years. You know, there's every weekend there's about 10 to 15.
Amazing.
All over London.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Exactly. So that's one thing we've noticed. The amount of events. Because when I started doing events, this was like 10, 15 years ago, you know, you'd be unlucky if you had another event competing on the same day. But now it's like with social media and how accessible it is to promote events, and you know, we've noticed a large amount of events on a daily basis. Another thing we've noticed is these events are more inclined to book local Latin artists, which is not something we used to see before. We never used to see. I'll give you an example. So last night, Mike Towers performed in Evolution in Battersea, and 3 local upcoming Latin artists opened the show for him. That's not something we used to see before, because the artists that existed here didn't really have an audience, didn't really have any fans, as you can say. Now, with social media and the popularity of Latin music, these local Latin UK-based artists, they have their fans, they have their people that follow them. So promoters are realizing this, and they are booking them for shows.
That's amazing.
So that is one, 2 things that we've noticed.
And that's changed. It gives these rising artists also more opportunities, like opening for Mike Towers. It's huge. It's something that could.
It creates revenue for them because they're getting paid. It creates an opportunity to, perform their music in front of large audiences. You know, in our festival, we had 15 artists perform in our festival on our stage, on the Candela stage. You know, and we had a crowd of about 30,000, 40,000 people. So that is very unique for upcoming artists to have that opportunity to perform in front of large crowds. So yeah, everyone's feeling the benefit of it. You know, the artists, the promoters, the DJs, the videographers, everyone's feeling the growth and the benefit.
And also, Candela, aside from being identified as a Latino label, I don't know if you can share with us what aspects can help you break through the noise or compete, especially if you could share with us some tips of how to position yourself in the London market.
I love that question. It's a very, very good question. And this is something that we asked ourselves when we founded Candela. You know, how are we going to be able to make a difference in the midst of all the noise coming from Latin America, El Caribe, España, you know, all of these countries? How are we the new boys on the block, gonna make a difference? And so between me and my partner Jose, we have similar ideology, but also we think very differently. And we've been able to sort of come to an agreement on this one, because it's like, okay, so let's start off with London. London is now seeing a massive growth because of the popularity of drill. Drill music?
I don't.
Okay. So drill music is a subgenre of hip hop. It's a type of hip hop that was formed in Chicago in the 90s, but it was popularized and updated and popularized in the UK, and now it's become a huge global movement. It's massive. It's huge. Drill is probably one of the top 4 or 5 genres in the world at the moment in terms of streams, views, popularity, that kind of stuff. And drill is becoming popular in España, all over Latin America. Now, the interesting thing about that is, where before the local, the youth in Latin America and Spain would look at America for influence when it came to urban hip-hop, right? Now, because of drill, they're looking at London. And this is a very, very unique thing. It's only been happening over the last 2 to 3 years. When we're done with this podcast, go check out the local drill scene in Spain. It's exploding. People like Skinny Man, these type of artists. Check it out when you have a minute. It's one of the fastest emerging scenes in Spain. And that's the same thing all over Latin America. And where are they getting this influence from? They're getting it from London. It's the London, how we talk, how we dress. They're getting that influence from London now. And as Candela Records, we wanna take advantage of that. And how we're gonna to answer your question, how are we gonna differentiate between the all the other people doing what we're doing in Latin America and Spain and Mexico? Is we're creating a sound that fuses urban UK sound with Latin music. So when we're producing reggaeton, our reggaeton beats are going to have a London element to it. Our drill music is going to have a London element to it. So that's what we want to do. We want to fuse the popularized urban culture here from London. We want to fuse it with the Latino thing, and how that's popular is, for example, myself. So I grew up here. I was born here. As you can tell by my accent, I sound like a London boy. But if you talk to me in Spanish, I'm 100% Latino. Now, the problem we have there is identity. I identify as a British Latino, and that's what we need to sell to the world. Because that is what is unique.
That's really cool. That's a really cool approach. And also, Spanish being the main language of the Latin American music market, do you ever saw this as a threat or an opportunity when it came to breaking the Latin British artists, in breaking those artists to the market?
That's another very good question.
And how do you approach it?
You got all the good questions, man. Okay, it's a very interesting question because so Spanish and English, I would say, is probably the most spoken languages in the world, right? And what we're finding is so in communities like here in the UK and in America, where we speak English and there's large Hispanic communities, where we're speaking something that we call Spanglish, which is a combination.
Yeah. This happens to us also. Yeah.
So we're speaking something that we call Spanglish, and we feel like that by using that formula, by going by that identity, again, the British Latino identity, where we speak English outside of the home, and when we get home we speak Spanish. So by following that ideology into the whole language barrier thing, we feel that everybody that speaks English wants to learn Spanish, and everyone that speaks Spanish wants to learn English. So there's an interest on both sides. So if you speak Spanglish, we feel that you appeal to a large audience.
It is, you're like, it's really interesting how's your vision into developing like multi-bicultural artists and everything. It's like really impressive. And I know that, for example, Atlantic has been actually supporting a lot of this. Like in 2012, they signed Snow the Product, who is like a Mexican immigrant in the States, and she she did great because of the signing with Atlantic Records. And I think that Atlantic signed her after her music was like posted on 50 Cent's website, something. So Atlantic saw that and were like, okay, this girl has something, So now with Candela Records, what are the key factors or achievements that can make you as the director of A&R be like, okay, I want this, I want to work with this guy, I want to develop with this artist now?
So for me, it's all about following the Atlantic kind of ideology, which is being able to spot new emerging sounds within underrepresented communities And so I'm not sure if I understood your question right, but one of the things what we're totally focused on is so we've got the budget and the resources to go and work with, the big artists that we want, but we're so focused on developing the scene here that that's what we're sticking to. We're sticking to signing artists that don't have large followings. They don't have large streams and stuff like that. So we're not signing these artists because of, what they've already done. We're signing these artists because of what we can see them developing into within a few years. And that's sort of how we operate here. And so, for example, if we talk about one of our guys called Angelo Flow,
from Venezuela.
He hasn't got from Venezuela, exactly. He hasn't got the largest following. He hasn't got the largest amount of streams. But we honestly feel that he has global, international potential, and that's what we want to do. We want to get to the grassroots of where these artists are, and develop them from an early stage, and help them grow and help them become into, the major artists that we think they can be. So, yes, we could go and sign people with big streams and big audiences, but we're focused on the scene here and developing this scene. So I'm not sure if that answers your question correctly, but
and I think it's a worthwhile investment because it's gonna last, right? It's not gonna be something quick that is gonna give you fast revenue for now. That will happen if you ever sign a huge artist with a lot of monthly listeners and things like that. But you're developing a scene, as you just said, and I think it's something that is last standing.
Exactly. I mean, with regards to revenue, just to quickly answer your scene, that's why we've developed the Latino life side of it is where we'll be seeing most of our revenue potentially for the next year or so, through the festivals, the events that we do. We're going to be touring next year. The Candela sound system is going to be touring in different festivals across the UK and Europe. So most of our revenue is going to be coming from live performances and shows and festivals and stuff like that. Because to answer your question, yes, we're developing artists from the ground up, and we have a strategy of when this development and how quickly we can do it. But it's not something that's going to be done overnight or even within the space of a few months. It's probably going to take a year or two before we get these artists to the level where we want them to be.
I want to jump on with a very small question, Luciano, because also I love the approach that you're saying that you're signing artists for what the potential you see on them. That's and I wanted to ask, what did you see in Angelo Flow when you signed him, or in Esco? What are you, if there is an answer for this, because I know it's a really hard question and maybe even ambiguous, but what are some factors you could say, or some things that you look at in the artist maybe, or that you see and you say, here's a good potential, or here's someone that could actually break it internationally?
So there's two things that personally that I look at when signing an artist. One is obviously the talent, how can they, their singing, their lyrical ability. So that obviously has a big part to play in, their image, their relatability to certain audiences. These all are the things that typically a label looks at. The demographic, all of that kind of stuff. But what I also tend to look at is the artist on a personal level. Are they easy to work with? Do they have the patience to go into something like this? The reliability of the artist. The artist's work ethic. So that and because I feel like talent is very important, but having the ability to deliver projects, to work at a certain time rate, to to be that professional that you need to be is really difficult.
We were talking about like how you guys have everything very well thought. This part of developing a scene so you can in the future have a better audience, like a more engaged audience. But now, like going a little bit more into detail, double clicking into the artist development side. What are the challenges when it comes to developing a multicultural background artist, right? So in a certain moment of their career can have a cultural impact that can break into different markets.
Yeah, well, that's something that we look at very early in the A&R process. So when I'm all looking for an artist, a lot of the time I already have in mind the type of, before I even contact them, what kind of regions, can we sell them in? What kind of what's the audience? We look at all of these things. So every artist that we go for covers a different audience, and we make sure to not. So we've got like of 2 artists, but there's probably about 3 to 4 that we're potentially going to be signing over the next few months. And what we've done is we've made sure that none of them cannibalize each other in the sense of everyone is different. So, for example, with Angelo Flo, he never grew up in London. So to try and, sell him here as, look, the London Latino is not going to work. Which is why we're focusing heavily on regions where we believe it is going to work with him. So, for example, he from Venezuela, he moved to Italy. And in Italy, there's a lot, and he identifies with Italy, and Italy also has a large following for reggaeton, alongside the neighboring countries, Portugal, Spain, stuff like that. So with Angelo Flo, we're going to be we develop a strategy for him, and in that strategy includes the regions and the markets that we're going to focus on. And that is always suited based on his personality, his type of music, whereas we have Esco, who is a Colombian kid who was born and raised here in London. We believe he has everything that it takes to one day be in the charts here in the UK as a UK artist. Because of that's his identity. That's where he grew up. That's where people will relate to him the most. So every artist that we look at or we have on our radar, we sort of have a map already of where their strengths are, where we don't want to promote them, where we do want to promote them, and we go by that. So every artist has a different strategy, and we make sure that they don't cannibalize each other.
It's really interesting, and I remember you were talking about first you want to develop a scene and then make this artist compete or go out from the London scene to now start getting to new countries, the bigger leagues, let's say.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I'm really curious about what would you say is a nice strategy to introduce a first or second generation immigrant artist into the origin country,
Yeah. Well, so one thing that everybody loves is when you come from one of these Latin American countries is representation outside of your country. So for example, in Chile, they si hay un chileno en Londres or in Estocolmo or wherever doing big things, they love that in Chile. They yes. welcome that because it represents them on a global scale. So what we want to do first is do some work here in the UK first and get them the audience that they need to then go to their native land. So with Angelo Flo, as we mentioned, he doesn't have the UK London relatability, but what we will be doing is he's got some really high profile features with UK artists that is going to bring him that audience that he would struggle to get organically, if that makes sense, on his own. And we're going to build him up here. He's already done. He headlined the festival. He's going to be headlining a few festivals next year. He's got this big release coming out with a big UK artist, and we're going to have We've got the best teams at Atlantic and at ADA, you know, working on it, making sure that it's on all the playlists and radios. So we're going to make sure he has a presence here in the UK. And then once we built that presence, we'll then move to Latin America and sort of try and develop him there. But that's what we personally feel. We feel that when people from Latin America see representation outside of Latin America, they welcome it. And we feel that by representing Venezuela, who has a massive now international population because of, you know, recent political issues. You know, you've got Venezuelan communities in Colombia, you've got Venezuelan communities all over Latin America, in Europe, here in the UK. You know, they're over the last few years, they've immigrated all over the world. And, you know, we don't feel that there's a lot of musical, you know, representation for them on an international scale. So that's where we feel Angelo Flo can really step in and sort of be that representation for them. And then making it easier to then, you know, develop it in Latin America.
Yeah, it's great. Like first like grow local and then go international. Yeah, that's like a really nice strategy. And with this aspect of now, for example, you were mentioning Venezuela, and like we're in this world nowadays really globalized, and we have immigrants everywhere, basically. And with this, it comes a term that we know that it exists in the music industry, which is cultural appropriation sometimes, you know? So my question will be like, how can artists and music executives work around this thin line of cultural appropriation without overstepping or offending cultures, and still find like amazing mixes of new music proposals and música mestiza al final, you know? Like, how can we still manage to control this?
That's a good question, and we have advisors that help us in this, with these kind of things, you know. People are doing it successfully all over the scene. I mean, if you look at Rosalía and how she's mixing flamenco with reggaeton, and yes, she did have some criticism, but who cares? Look at how she's doing it on an international scale. You know, there's always going to be criticism, and people have negative opinions, and as long as what you're doing is in honor of the culture and not sort of trying to rip it off and make it something else, then who cares what people say, cultural appropriation or not cultural appropriation? As long as the intention is to honor and develop what's going on within that culture, then that's all that matters. I mean, how much criticism did Rosalía have? You know, being a Spanish girl trying to make it in the Latina world, she had a lot of criticism. But did that stop her growth? No, it didn't. Because I'm not really too worried about that, to be honest.
Awesome, fantastic, Luciano. We have almost reached the end of the podcast, the interview, and we want to show our appreciation to you for coming out here and chatting with us a little bit. I don't know if you have any social media where people can get more information about Candela, reach out to you or something.
Yeah, so follow. We've got Candela Records UK, which is the official Candela Records Instagram. We've got Latino Life UK. That's like the media arm of Candela Records. You'll find all our events and everything that's going on in the wider community. And then you've got the Latino Shade Room, which is an urban page that promotes the urban Latin scene in the UK and in the wider European communities. So go check out the Latino Shade Room, Latino Life UK, and Candela Records UK.
Awesome, fantastic. I don't know if there is a final message that you want to give to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. The final message from myself over at Candela is that although we're based in the UK, it doesn't mean that we are solely going to be working, developing, and signing UK artists. We want to be the guys to really push it here in the UK and in Europe. So if you're an artist and you're based in Spain or you're based in Italy or Netherlands or wherever you're based, we're interested in speaking to you and listening to your music. So just send it over to info@candelarecords.co.uk, and there's someone there that will pick it up and either pass it on to me or someone else in the A&R team. And, we want to be the guys that spot and help develop the talent before it develops. We want to get in there early. And we can't just do that here in the UK. We want to do that all over Europe. So, get in touch. We want to speak to you.
Awesome, Luciano. This has been an amazing conversation, man. Thank you for coming.
No problem. Thank you.
It's been you just left like different jewels for us to pick up and our audience that for sure we're gonna learn from. And thank you, man.
No problem, guys. Anytime, I'm happy to come back as well.
Awesome. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much, Luciano.
Muchas gracias por escucharnos. Y no te olvides de seguirnos en Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora o la plataforma digital que sea de tu preferencia. Si te gustó el podcast, no olvides recomendarnos a tu grupo de amigos o colegas. Esa es la mejor manera de que sigamos creciendo la comunidad. También puedes encontrarnos en Instagram, Facebook y YouTube como 8000 Kilómetros Podcast. Cualquier comentario, duda o sugerencia es más que bienvenida. Nos vemos en el siguiente episodio.